All right. Well, welcome, my friends. Happy Friday. I hope you guys are having a great Friday so far, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us. This is always a fun show. I love doing these shows so much. And we've got a great guest today, Mr. Bob Troia. We're going to be talking about biohacking, manipulating and changing our environment, all kinds of cool stuff for improving your health. So we'll introduce him in just a second. Today is episode 637, so if you want to grab the show notes to the links to Bob's website or any of the links that we talk about, I'm going to do my best to take good notes during today's episode. So anything that you want will be available at extremehealthradio.com forward slash 637. So let me bring up some of our upcoming shows. If you guys haven't checked out our shows, or if you're new to our work, we're doing shows 3 days a week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They're all live at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. And it's a good time. It's a really good time. So let me bring up our little show schedule and see what we got coming up here for you. Let's see here. So today is Friday. So today is November 30th with Bob Troia, Quantified Bob. So that'll be a lot of fun. We'll introduce him in a second. Monday, December 3rd, we're going to have Matt Blackburn on. We're going to talk about fasting, supplementation, longevity protocols. That'll be a good show. And then another one, a doubleheader on Monday, we're going to have Andy Mant. He is the owner of Blue Blocks, which is the company who makes the blue blocking glasses that I'm wearing right now that you can't see. So we're going to talk about light with Andy Mant on Monday and how light affects our mitochondria. And then on Wednesday, Dana Scott. And on Friday, our dentist, Dr. Stuart Nunley, biological holistic dentist par excellence. Then we're going to talk with Matt Maruka about light again. So a lot of cool stuff happening on Extreme Health Radio. So if you haven't joined us or subscribed, anything like that, make sure to do that. And that way you can stay up to date with everything we have going on. The best thing to do would probably be to sign up to our newsletter. And that way you can get access to our previous 5 shows that we do, all of our archive shows, all that good stuff is available in our newsletter. So we send that out Monday and Thursday of every month. Any other sort of tidbits to get to? I don't think so. I want to learn how to biohack my health here. So let me bring up Bob's website here so you guys can take a look. His name is Bob Troia. Check out his website for you guys that are watching on the YouTube, Quantified Bob. And he's you can go on his website. He's just tracking everything. Oh my gosh. Like you can read through his notes and look at his Excel spreadsheets. He tracks everything with cholesterol. He tests his sleep. He tries all these biohacking devices, tests his ketone levels. And man, this guy is just on top of it. And so it says here he on his media, he's been on CBS News, Sunday Morning, PBS NewsHour, National Geographic Explorer, Fast Company, Men's Fitness. He's been on a ton of really cool podcasts as well. He's a biohacker extraordinaire. And let me bring him on the show and turn his mic up so you guys can take a look and introduce Bob to our show here. All right, Bob, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing great, Justin. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, like I said before the show, we met up through a mutual friend and guest, Luke Story, and I was glad to be made aware of your work and just diving into your website, man. Like you are just meticulous beyond belief with the things that you track, man.
Well, it's something that's been built up over many years, so it's not like I'm doing all of that at once. So I built a pretty good foundation that's allowed me to kind of take things to additional levels on top of it.
Yeah. So we were talking before. You're based out of New York City, is that right?
That is correct.
So are you in the heart of the city, or are you outside at all?
I'm actually just across the river in Brooklyn, a little neighborhood called Williamsburg, which is known to be kind of a cool, trendy place. But I literally can walk over a bridge and be in Manhattan in 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Well, have you been there your whole life?
No, I grew up about an hour away, went away to college, and then literally took a final on a Friday, moved to New York on a Monday 2 decades ago, and never left.
Yeah, just stayed there ever since.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's funny because the more I learn about health myself and the more I try to reconnect with nature and these types of things, this is one of the reasons why I'm asking you about where you live. It seems to me more and more like I just want to get further and further away from society and away from cities and closer to nature, stuff like that. What are your thoughts about all that kind of stuff?
Well, in terms of biohacking, I mean, ultimately, yes, you can't replace nature. You can't replace that. We're trying to create, use these tools or devices or technologies to offset some of what we're lacking from living. Let's say we choose to live in like this urban environment.
Hmm.
And so, I think even if someone that's living in the city can get out to nature as often as possible, that's nothing but a plus. The extreme would be sure if you just went totally away, you may be having the best air quality, the best water quality, eating the best food. Other issues could potentially come up with social isolation. There's other aspects that you have to kind of weigh. If you've got a really tight network or family or community, then more power to you. I think people that often come to live in New York, it's because of opportunity. Any big city. For me, I got into technology very early on. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time in that space. So I probably couldn't have done that moving to other cities at the time. Now we're in a world where, sure, there's people can be more distributed. You can kind of work remotely, and so yeah. I think ultimately get out to nature as much as you can.
Hmm. We had a guest a while back on, Dr. Jack Cruz, who I'm sure you're familiar with, but he has a famous quote that I actually disagree with. He says that you can't heal in the same environment that you got sick in, and he's a big proponent of changing your environment and manipulating your environment to allow the body to heal. I don't like placing limits on the human body. I think anything is possible, but I understand the gist of sort of what he's saying there is like, a lot of people are looking inside, like, am I eating the right food? Am I doing this, that, or the other thing that's causing a disease? And what he's saying is, no, look at your environment, look at the actual place where you live, and look at how that's affecting your biology. So I get what he's saying completely, but do you think that city living moving into the future is going to get more and more challenging and difficult and less healthy in the future, do you think?
I think it's always going to be a little bit more difficult than, let's say, living out in nature. Uh, just given air quality, you were talking about, EMFs and radiation. You talk about cell phone towers, Wi-Fi, all that sort of stuff. But now, I'm sure Jack brought this up on your show. The proliferation of things like 5G, where we're basically going to be blanketing, no matter where you live, you're going to be bathing in this other level of types of radiation. You can't avoid it. But just to go back to, I guess, your statement about Jack, I think what he's maybe saying is there's two parts to it. One is, did the city itself make you sick? Like the environment you were in make you sick? Or if you're already in a bad state, I think what he means is you need to get out of something that isn't going to help you necessarily get there.
Mm.
And he may take it to the extreme, but you have to decide for yourself, like, am I willing to go to the 100%, or can I get pretty close by going 80% of the way there, or make certain decisions? Like I can sit here in New York City and I can do all these things to mitigate in my home, like Wi-Fi and EMF in my home. But we were talking about this earlier. Um, I turn on my Wi-Fi connection on my computer, and I can see there's 30 odd connections coming from other neighbors, buildings down the street, everywhere. So it's like, for me, biohacking in the city is as much about trying to keep my head above water and mitigate, what it's all throwing at me, like the whole concept of modern living,
Right.
as much as trying to, let's say, remedy an existing health condition.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. I guess those are two completely separate issues, right?
I mean, one leads to the other ultimately. I mean, if you don't take care of yourself long term, you can run into a whole nother gamut of issues. And I do think as we keep advancing, the cities themselves are just, even if technology advances and we have better healthcare and better, we understand all the science of health and wellness better. I just think there's environmental, concerns. We choose to use cell phones. We choose to be on, laptop computers.
Mm-hmm.
We choose to make these choices. Often, people are drinking certain kinds of water. They're not going right to the stream and drinking it. They're, trying to source it from other places because they know it's better. So we make these choices, and you can usually there's an economic cost, attached to it. So, it's gonna you want to eat the best food and drink the best water and things like that. It's gonna hit your wallet, but
Yeah.
that's an investment in your health, and that's the price of living in an urban environment.
Yeah, and two, something else that maybe a lot of people don't consider or think about is this idea that's like a double effect. So if you're in the city, and let's say you're living in a city and it's actually affecting your cells in a negative way, um, not only is that happening, so that's happening, but you're also not getting the benefit if you were sitting in the middle of the woods, right, by yourself or with family and friends, and getting all of the benefits of that. So you're not getting the benefits of living in the woods or living closer to nature, and then you're also getting extra whatever environmental stresses and things too, right?
Exactly. I mean, there's, we have to look at it not just from the standpoint of what the environment throws at us. That's one part of, of our well-being. I do think things like social interaction are super important. We can talk about optimizing our sleep and our air quality and eating the best foods, but you know, I'd rather see a family eating dinner together at more of a casual fast food type restaurant than people eating the healthiest meal by themselves, like just not even thinking about, just chowing it down at their laptop, sitting there by themselves doing it. I mean, you're not really taking time to to digest it and enjoy it. I think that element of social connection is super important.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's much more difficult to get if you live alone in a cabin in the woods, right? It's like not going to happen as much.
Yeah, and we're trying to use online and social networks and all of that to we think bring people together, but it's never really going to replace that sort of face-to-face interaction. I mean, I've literally done experiments where, not experiments, but I've looked at data like we'll talk about things like heart rate variability, which is a sign of your body's fight or flight response, or if you're in a stressful or non-stressed out condition, where you can check it every morning. I've gone out and had friends in town. We'd go out and have a great dinner, have a great time, maybe have a few glasses of wine, which normally you would think, oh, that's going to make my recovery scores worse the next day. But
Right.
they're actually way improved purely, and I'm convinced it's purely because of the social interaction. I think when I'm times of the year when I'm much more active socially, I see the effect.
Man, that's so crazy. Yeah, I'm sure that's got to be a part of it, right? I mean, just being around other people, like nothing really replaces looking someone in the eye in person, giving them a hug and laughing at some joke or something. Like nothing beats that. Nothing virtually can come close to that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. Like whenever if you haven't seen a loved one for a long time, or even an old friend, you're just you just feel different, than the next
Hmm.
day.
Hmm.
It's and obviously it's been proven, if you hug someone, we give off there's like oxytocin and things that we kind of use that drives our neurotransmitter kind of function, where you
Hmm.
feel good, and it's not just about you feeling good; it's you feel good about the fact that other people are feeling good around you. I mean,
Hmm.
I think it is contagious. So yeah, but back to the original point about the environment and city living. Yeah, it's a choice that not. I mean, some people don't have the choice. They're born here. They grow up in the city, and that's the environment they grew up in. Other people maybe lived out in the country growing up, and again for professional reasons or whatever, decided to move to a more populated area.
Hmm. Yeah, sometimes, or people go somewhere for school or for college or something like that, where they have to be somewhere for a few years, maybe where they don't want to be. So let's talk about someone like who's trying to optimize their health. Like, it's funny because a lot of people now will talk about how food is so much lower on the list, in relationship to things like EMF or stress or sleep or light or things like that. But let's talk a little bit about like what things can people do if they're living in an environment that they don't want to be in, until they can actually get out of that environment. There's lots of different things people can do to improve their health. So let's kind of go through some of those. Do you want to start first? Let's start first with sleep, because that's a third of our life. And I think that would be a good place to start, because that's, ultimately where we heal and rejuvenate, right?
Exactly. So my sort of self experiments around sleep started probably 7 or 8 years ago, where I was more just using some of the early trackers and wearables to understand my sleep in terms of from a data perspective, like how long am I sleeping, what sleep stages am I getting, and all of that. Now we've you know we have sleep, we have stress, which are intimately related, because I think they both affect each other reciprocally. So I began looking at just my sleep, and as the wearables got better, and you could look at more of the data, I started, I viewed myself as, oh, I sleep, 7, 8 hours a night. I get this much REM, this much deep sleep. And then I started seeing the numbers kind of going down, like saying, oh, why am I waking up many times during the night? Or why am I not, I think I'm in bed for a certain, 8 hours, but I'm not actually sleeping for 8 hours. And I don't realize I'm waking up. These are very small disturbances that were happening throughout the night. And so with regards to like optimizing your sleep, first we have to understand our sleep. We want to understand our trends, like if you wake up and you're exhausted every day, something's up. Something's going on there. If you wake up every day and you feel like you're pretty good, but maybe it's a chance for you to feel even better. If you can get, maybe you're in bed 8 hours a day, but you're only getting really 6 hours of sleep. So that's the same as you going to bed for 6 hours and getting 100% of that time, asleep. And so, you can look at things like, your bedroom is an easy kind of starting point if you want to start like thinking about hacking your environment, because it's one room. Often it's my bedroom isn't particularly big, and I can look at things like air quality. There's sensors that you can purchase that will track the sort of temperature, humidity, looks for particles in the air, volatile organic compounds, things like carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. Again, living in an urban environment, even things like if you have a window facing the street, there's car exhaust from vehicles, and that can make its way actually through into your bedroom. And what I started doing was stacking that overnight air data with my sleep data. And one of the simple things I noticed was the CO2 levels in my bedroom would rise throughout overnight, because my bedroom door was shut, the windows were shut, and it basically was, you're exhaling carbon dioxide all night, and you're not replenishing that oxygen into the room. That at some point your body it'll disrupt your sleep. And in my case, like I could see that the disruptions I would have were very close to when those levels would go up. And then in the morning, if you open the door of your bedroom, you're letting all this fresh air in from outside, and now the levels are kind of going back to where they should be as you dissipate the carbon dioxide. Now, there something like carbon monoxide. I mean, we all have carbon monoxide detectors in our homes. Obviously, that's it's an odorless, very poisonous gas. That's why we have we're required by law to have these carbon monoxide sensors in our homes.
Right.
Whereas, so that if you've got issues with carbon monoxide in your home, that's a much bigger issue. But things that are more like based on your behavior, like opening or closing a door, having proper ventilation. If you've got problems with dust and pollen, I mean, a lot of people have experienced issues with mold.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things where you have to first detect it, and then come up with ways to mitigate it. So in my case, I have a really good quality air purifier that it'll turn on and off based on like the sensor that monitors the air quality. Well, if it detects like particles in the air over a certain amount, it then turns on the air purifier, and then we'll turn it back off. And so you can do some of that kind of automation, but if you just want to do it simple, you can just have a good quality air purifier that you run periodically. You can often move these room to room if you need to. My bedroom, I did things like looking at light. So overnight, a lot of light was getting into my bedroom from outside. So there's street lights, there's other businesses that have lights on all night. In blackout curtains. I basically purchased some inexpensive fabric. They're like dark curtains that go over, they're not always during the day they're open, but at night I can close them up, and it basically prevents me from even seeing my hand in front of my face. And so I've kind of removed all the external light from my room. So I take that variable out of the equation. Then the next thing I looked at was so we talk a lot about EMF, electromagnetic radiation, and it can come from things like cell phone towers or Wi-Fi networks and things like that. But a very dangerous source is actually in our homes. If you in your house wiring, if you have poor house wiring or improperly grounded outlets, things like that, that can throw off electromagnetic fields. And, there's some debate over what, those levels are. In Europe, they have very strict guidelines on what these EMF levels can be, especially for low EMF, which
Mm-hmm.
is what comes off of power lines and the power lines and inside your home as well. So in my case, I actually noticed there was a big source of there's basically must have been an improperly grounded electrical line that was maybe touching a sprinkler system or something like that. So it was throwing off a lot of EMF.
Oh, really?
There's meters there are meters you can get that you can go around your home and check for sources. So there's going to be obvious sources, like you go near your microwave, even if the microwave's off, if you're within 10 feet of it, you're going to see pretty high levels of electromagnetic radiation. But in your bedroom, I happen to see a couple localized spots, and you can't treat it like other EMF. They don't sell like your cell phone can have a little case that blocks an EMF. I mean, low level EMF or the low frequencies, unless you have like lead in the walls, you're not going to block them. So we have to use basically physics to our advantage. So the levels of electromagnetic fields follow what's called an inverse square law, meaning if you're a foot away from the source, let's say it's 16, then you move another foot away, it's going to be 1/16 of that. So it's like everything, it's a square as you go double the distance. So what I ended up doing was just moving my bed about 6 inches away from the wall, and my headboard of my bed was, and then where I put the meter basically where I'd be sleeping, and I saw the levels just drop off. So I didn't have to like knock out my walls. I didn't have to spend thousands. just relocate, move it a couple inches away, and you've corrected that problem. But I think for a lot of people, before they start getting worried about a lot of these things, I mean, if they don't have an underlying issue or condition, if they're not, they could take some proactive steps. Obviously, like I don't put my cell phone to my head. I don't keep it in my pocket.
Right.
I've just encountered too many personal experiences of people who have had come down with some pretty bad conditions over the past few years. And I mean, we're both speaking on these headphones that use, basically the speakers are down here and they pump air up through into our ears. So, is there a big electromagnetic field between the headphones? If they were just regular, like the ones you get with your iPhone or something like that, there's a tiny bit, but I just said, I'll just, take that out of the equation. They don't work great for listening to music, but for speaking to people, instead of talking on the phone with my phone to my ear, I just, talk this way.
Yeah.
Or put it on speaker.
Yeah, no, it's huge. Yeah, the ones I have are the same thing. You can kind of see, and yeah, they're called like Air Pods or Air something, aren't they? Air Tubes or something like that.
There's one brand that's called like Air Tube. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like knockoffs or different variations of them, but they all work under the same principle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. For me, I was like, I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of like things online, and so whenever I'm working out, I'm listening to something. If I'm jumping on the rebounder, I'm listening to something. If anytime I'm driving around, I'm listening, because I'm always constantly wanting to learn more information. So I figure it's one of those things where it would make sense that we'd want to mitigate or, spend time mitigating and optimizing the areas of our life where we do the most or spend the most time. So sleep is one. I figure if I listen to, 3 or 4 hours a week of this, and I do that every week for 52 weeks, and then I do it for 10, 20 years, like that's a lot of time being exposed to this kind of stuff. And so that's why I got these recently. And, with sleep, it's crazy. We had a guy out recently to our home, Brian Hoyer. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He has, a website for those that don't know, Shielded Healing, and we sell one of his products in our store. But dude, he was in our home, and the dirty electricity coming off the walls, the amount of geopathic stress, the wireless radiation that we're being exposed to. They're just installing a 5G tower in the neighborhood next to ours. Dude, it's just like, it makes me want to go live in the woods, This is crazy.
Well, what's funny is I've been basically tracking sleep for 7 or 8 years, let's call it, with different devices. But I think the two best ever kind of sleep, I guess we want to call it quality scores, or however, whatever metric you want to throw at it, have been 2 times that I was out, way out in nature, like away from like no cell phone service, no anything, just sleeping in a tent, that kind of thing. And
wow.
So I'm convinced that a large part of that was just being taken out of an environment that's already has a high level of kind of electromagnetic radiation going. Because I mean, it is a stressor while you're sleeping. Even if you mitigate as much as you can. I mean, the levels aren't zero. I mean, I was literally out, in the middle of kind of like the Rio Grande, somewhere in West Texas, where it was, I didn't see a person for 3 days, but like there was no cell phone service, no, you couldn't, we weren't, you weren't getting exposed to anything.
Wow.
And granted, there's a lot of the variables at play. You're out in nature, you're with friends and all that, but I still feel that definitely had a benefit, for me at least. And I do notice, like for me, I definitely sleep better at certain temperatures. So I actually like it a little cooler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what sleep apps do you use to check? I know there's like the one I'm familiar. It's not really an app. It's more like a device, a wearable. It's the Oura Ring. I know that's kind of popular. I don't have one of those, but I'm just curious what kind of testing devices. How do you track your sleep each night?
So right now I'm using what you just mentioned, the Oura Ring. This is the new model that just came out. So this is, it's really good at tracking your sleep stages, giving you some insights into giving you insights regarding your sort of habits around, are you going to sleep too late, too early? It can detect, for example, if you ate a meal late at night and your metabolism is elevated while you're sleeping overnight. It's also checking your heart rate variability, and and so it's basically, people also like the form factor of it because it's much smaller than wearing this is like a Fitbit.
Uh-huh.
So I still wear multiple devices because I like a second opinion on things.
Yeah.
I like because I don't view things can be great, cool tech. I'm not saying the devices themselves are faulty. There could be user error. Sometimes I might sleep and maybe this ring spins around or something, and I lose some of the data. And I kind of look at those trends. I can see where maybe something is always underreporting my deep sleep, whereas another one is better at detecting my disturbances. But over the years, I've gone through a multitude of devices, and some of the best ones actually came out a long time ago. But the companies they ended up going out of business because there wasn't a big consumer market for what they were doing.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? How in today's world, I think it's become, because it's so techy and there's so much going on in today's world, like the idea of biohacking, in the 1970s would, even if we had the devices to do it, like the Oura Ring and other things like that, it almost wouldn't even have been necessary because the environment back then was so much less of a burden to the body. It's like our environment's continually getting more and more stressful on our system. So because of that, we have to keep doing more and more just to sort of maintain, like you're saying before the show, just to maintain, baseline, just keeping your head above water,
Yeah. And it's another thing to point out with something like the Oura Ring is, we're talking about radiation and mitigating the effects. We don't want to have all this Bluetooth stuff on our bodies while we're sleeping. It's like counterintuitive. So this is a device that you can actually you can put into like an airplane mode during the night. So it's not going to transmit anything. There's still obviously electric, it's a battery and that sort of stuff going on, but there's no transmission of, Bluetooth or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know it's interesting because when Brian was over at our house, I was talking to him. I was just kind of joking, Brian Hoyer, and I was just joking with him saying, like, dude, we should really just all be wearing like silver threaded clothing so that no EMF, can get to our vital organs and stuff. And then he said to me something interesting. He said, yeah, I would be really into that only if it were really tight against the skin, because there are frequencies that could sort of penetrate, because frequencies aren't sort of relegated to clothing. So he was saying, if frequencies get in between your skin and the clothing, it can act almost like a Faraday cage. And I thought, that's interesting. And then I mentioned to him about, people wearing glasses. And he said, something he's thinking about researching more is the glasses, like the metal that's on glasses, like those little screws on the side of the glasses, and the frames sometimes have metal in them. And he was saying, like, he suspects that there's going to be some sort of EMF, just sort of wireless electricity jumping onto anything metal, even if it's sitting on your head like that. And so I thought, wow, that's another thing I never even thought of before. Like, how detailed do you want to get with this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, those are all really valid concerns. We have to decide, you know, what's, especially we talk about the idea of biohacking, and it's about getting the maximum benefit for the least amount of effort,
Uh-huh.
or just amount. So, if you can do three things that get you 90% of the way there versus doing 20 things that get you 100%, it's up to the person whether they want to invest the time, money, effort to do all of it. Um, or kind of start off gradually and say, look, I can get pretty close by doing three or four things. um, but yeah, so like things about glasses and metal frames, totally valid. I've heard conversations about jewelry. You can take it into a lot of different directions.
Yeah, and then you start thinking about what people are doing to their own bodies as sort of like body modification ideas where people, or maybe not even just body modifications, like putting, like even earrings or things like that. But I'm thinking, like, what if you have to have knee surgery and you have a metal plate in your knee? What's that doing?
Right. So I actually I was talking to someone recently. So like dental implants. So they've actually come up with new, like the posts that they would use are metal as well, and they're replacing them now. I think there's a new, like there used to be like titanium, or they'd have a different something that would be conductive, and they're replacing them now with something else. But it comes, in terms of whether or not someone should actually do that and get, if they need to go have that or need an implant, it then comes down to like, well, it depends on your environment, right? Because if you're in a high EMF environment, it may not be the wisest thing, or depending on what materials are being used.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's so fascinating because I remember back in 2008, I was training jujitsu a lot, and I tore my ACL. Yeah, I tore my ACL in my knee, and I think it was like an 80% tear, and the doctor wanted to do surgery. But even then, I knew, because I'd been into this since about 2003, so I was pretty well versed in all this stuff. But I knew at that time that like they wanted to do the cadaver situation where they would take a cadaver ACL and then install it. And then I knew that there would be an issue with that because your body would constantly think that that's a foreign substance that doesn't share your genetic DNA. And so I knew that would be a constant burden on my body all my life. But then I asked, like, what materials do you buy, screw that into the bone with, And he said, oh, they're just metal plates. And I thought, like metal plates, I'm not going to do a metal plate combined with like a cadaver DNA kind of a thing. But then I'm just thinking, as you're talking, if this is a situation where people have like metal plates or titanium, and right now in the environment today, they're okay. But what if, like, in a few years, there's 7G that comes out that then affects these titanium or metal implants? Like, we don't know what's going to change in the environment. So, how do we know how that's going to affect something that's seemingly innocuous today?
No, exactly. We we can try to predict and guess. We don't know what is going to be done in terms of regulation or legislation. Or if we're just saying, look, you got to suck it up. We're going in this direction with our bathing ourselves in these next gen networks, so we can all download videos really fast on our phones. We have to figure out how to mitigate it. And like I said, when we have this stuff blanketing the earth, with satellites are beaming it down on us instead of cell phone towers, you know, you're gonna have to figure out ways to mitigate it, whether it's protecting our homes. And and there's a lot of science that's already out there that kind of proves a lot of this. But at the same time, we're not going to really know for another decade or two, because the cell phone, even people who smartphones have only been around for maybe 10 years. So we're going to have data points over the next day. I mean, this stuff's already happening now. Like you can't necessarily connect it. Like I've seen many cases of people developing types of brain cancers and things like that. And it's really sad, but you could speculate about the cause. It could be a number of things. But until there's a lot more data points and the research is being done around it, then I think you can see changes being made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of environmental changes happening right now. Some have even said, this is the biggest environmental impact since the late 1800s, 1879, when we sort of introduced electricity to the world. We're with Bob Troia. His website is quantifiedbob.com. Let me bring that up for you guys if you guys want to follow what he's doing. Some really cool stuff, man. Like I highly encourage you guys to check out his website and read his articles, because he's a guy that's actually putting into practice all the stuff that we talk about. He's actually doing the experiments on himself. So maybe when we come back from the break, we'll talk to him about the bulletproof diet, intermittent fasting. That might be kind of cool. And so if you go here to his experiments page, he's tracking cholesterol response with QS blood testers. He's using the NanoV. I just had the opportunity to meet the folks at NanoV, so that was cool. Lowering oxidative stress and boosting mitochondria, ketosis. So when we come back from the break, I think we'll ask him about ketosis, fasting, living off of fat instead of sugar. Really cool stuff. Quantifiedbob.com. And if you guys are interested in the show notes of anything that we talk about today, it is extremehealthradio.com/637. And let me bring up, speaking of sort of biohacking and things, this is a little device that I've been using for quite some time now. Use it seemingly every day. And red light therapy is basically mitochondrial food. Just like with different frequencies or different aspects of diet and nutrition, all of that stuff can be broken down into different amino acids, vitamins, minerals, things like that. And the same way that happens, the same thing happens with light. All the different colors, all the different frequencies, all of the different temperatures, all of these things affect your body in different ways. And so red light is the healing aspect of light. And I would recommend over and above, orders of magnitude beyond any kind of red light device, is actually just getting out in the sun. But the problem is that in today's world, getting out in the sun is not easy. It's like, I don't know what it is. For some reason, we just don't get in the sun, or we don't get outside very much these days. When you were a kid, didn't you spend a lot of time outside? And remember how healthy you were, how much energy you had? It's probably because one of the reasons is you're spending so much time outside. And so what I love about the Joovv is that it's, like I said before, it's mitochondrial food. It helps to recharge your mitochondria, helps to stimulate the DNA and RNA. It's incredible for lowering inflammation, increasing the lymphatic system and the blood flow. It helps to carry waste from damaged tissue. It's just an awesome, awesome thing. And a lot of people use it for inflammation, swelling, that kind of thing. Also, I use it after a workout too. If I do a heavy workout, I'll go and use that because it helps to lower inflammation in the body. But some of the other sort of more, vein aspects, I might say, is it helps with skin damage on the skin. So if you're like, got acne or wrinkles or been sunburned, things like that, this is amazing because it helps improve collagen production. It helps to increase testosterone as well. And what's cool about the Joovv is it's sort of modular. Like you can see the photo of this guy. You can build them. You can put them on your desk. You can put them in different areas of your home. It's really, really cool device. So big fan of it. Something I use every single day. As you guys know, if you follow the show, light is something that I've been really studying the last probably 5 years or so. And light is an amazing, amazing way to improve your health dramatically, and I think more so than food. And then something else, including food, that I wanted to tell you guys about was the Stockton Aloe One. If you guys go to your health food store and you look at the ingredients on the back of your aloe vera, you're going to find all kinds of crazy, weird, bizarre ingredients. I don't know why they're all in there. I don't understand it. This Rodney Stockton was the guy that started Stockton Aloe One, and he died when he was about 96, I think, years old, and he attributed his long life, of course, to consuming aloe vera. It's incredible for your immune system. Most people think it's really great for putting on your skin for like a sunburn, things like that, because it does lower inflammation in the body, increases circulation. It's very antifungal, antibacterial, antimicrobial. It's just a really amazing, it's like the original superfood. But what's great about this aloe vera is that it doesn't contain any of the other ingredients that you'll see in your health food store. So if you're looking to improve your health, improve your digestion, this is amazing stuff. So what they do is they ship it to you fresh, frozen. So they'll actually ship it to you in a frozen state, and it's a little bit defrosted. I was almost going to say thawed. Defrosted when it comes to you. And then you just pour out like a couple ounces a day, and talk about a complete healing of your gut. I mean, aloe vera is just, it contains so many different minerals and vitamins and over 75 different active compounds in this stuff. And even things like boosting your immune system, like ace mannan, It helps to, improve tumor necrosis factor A. I mean, this stuff is like amazing, amazing healing substance. And so if you're looking to improve your gut health, I'm telling you guys, Stockton Aloe 1, it's also great for your immune system, has some really bizarre substance called ormus in it. We did a whole show on ormus a few years ago. But I'm telling you guys, get this aloe vera. And what they do is they send you some face cream too that contains the aloe vera in it. And so this is like the best aloe vera that they have on the market. It's raw. It's got all its enzymes, living enzymes. It's not heated. It's incredible, incredible stuff. So make sure to pick some of this Stockton Aloe 1 if you guys are looking to improve your health. So let me bring myself back on, and I want to see if there's any questions in the chat room. If you guys have any questions for Bob Troia here, got a lot of cool people. Mark from Holland is here. Beck from Ohio. Rod from British Columbia. A lot of regulars here, which is really cool. So, oh, wow, gosh, Puerto Rico, everywhere. Wow. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, I think what we'll do is just type them in all caps in the chat room, and that way I'll know it's a question. And then we'll kind of just bounce around with Bob and take some questions from the chat room. And let me bring him back up. So, Bob, I was going to ask you, so in terms of like what you are doing with your diet, because it looks like you're doing a lot of work with ketosis and fasting and tracking ketone levels and stuff like that. Have you sort of settled into a diet that seems to work best for you, or are you still sort of experimenting around?
It's something that for me has evolved over, let's say, the last 6 or 7 years. When sort of the paleo diet came about, for me, it was very eye-opening in terms of I had thought I had been eating very what I called healthy, which is very high carb, low fat, eat lean chicken breasts and all that. And I thought I was exercising and thought I was doing great, but my energy levels sucked. And I looked at started doing lab testing, like testosterone was tanking and all of that. So, but I had to kind of rethink my idea of what a healthy diet is in terms of getting more these healthy saturated fats, increasing intake of certain foods, cutting out all the gluten and grains for me, because it turned out I was somewhat intolerant to that. And I had some other autoimmune issues that were revealed. So over time, I was able to sort of dial in, this is when things like the bulletproof diet came around as well. And so people discovered drinking coffee with some healthy fats in it, and you gave you a bunch of energy. And for me, definitely, it opened my eyes, and I started saying, well, it kind of put me down this path of what else can I be changing and tweaking. And so I started adding in things like intermittent fasting, creating eating windows that were, let's say, within 8 hours each day, and learning to I don't need to be eating all the time, and then figuring out the best time, like where should that 8 hour window for me be that works best. And then a few years later, we started talking about things like getting more into exogenous ketones and ketosis, and people were, I'm not going to say I follow a ketogenic diet. I'm keto adapted. I can fast for, let's say, a day and go, pretty deep into ketosis, pretty quickly. So my body is good at shifting fuel sources. But it's something that took, this is because my body's been eating a certain type of diet for a number of years. And so for me, it just comes down to, you kind of start with a template, and you figure out what things you need to add in or take out over time. And so, like, if you take that template of like a bulletproof diet, I probably eat just a tiny bit more carbs, but they're complex carbs. They're not simple carbs. So I might add a little bit more like yam or something, eat more, definitely things that are a little more starchy vegetables, but not an immense amount of carbs. My body just deals a little better with it, whether it's genetically or for other reasons. But I still add in more of those healthy fats. I've made an effort to add more, getting more omega 3s in my diet. So good, fish oils, or eating things like sardines and wild caught salmon. So adding, I try to get, a good amount of my protein sources from seafood, as much as I'm getting it from things like beef and lamb, et cetera. So yeah, and I think everyone's going to respond differently. Like, we're hearing about things now like this carnivore diet, right, where people are just eating nothing but steak.
Yeah,
and
I know.
having and it makes sense though when you think about it, because it's effectively an elimination diet. These are people that probably had other issues, some other things they've been eating and are incorporating in their diet that they've taken it out and now they're thriving. And obviously you're also benefiting from, you're eating, eating steak all day. It's a very satiating type of food. So it's going to be more difficult to hit your calorie target. So people are probably also doing some involuntary caloric restriction.
Yeah,
So,
that's
you're
interesting.
losing
Yeah.
water weight. So that's why, I'm curious to see how people do long-term. Like, I know people that are doing it, maybe they'll do a 30-day reset kind of, diet with it. But
Uh-huh.
then, the verdict's still out in terms of like, if someone does this for 2 years or 3 years, like what the effects will be. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I just know I like to add in, I like vegetables.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm not putting down any other diet. I'm just saying for me, will I do a carnivore diet one day? Maybe if I decide, I want to experiment with it. The challenge with, when I'm doing all these experiments is that you can't be doing them all at the same time. Like the variables all interfere with each other. So it becomes very
Right.
difficult to say, for the next 30 days, I'm going to just do one thing, because well, what if you change up your exercise routine, or you change up something else, or you're traveling? You got to factor in those variables.
Yeah, that's so true. Are you familiar with, and have you ever experimented with the primal Agenus vonderplanets diet, the raw meat and the raw organ meat and stuff like that? Have you ever tried that?
I haven't tried it. I mean, I do. I mean, the extent I would say I do is I will take some grass-fed liver, and I will cut it into little cubes and freeze it, and then I can just pop them in my mouth, a couple times a week, just to get it down. Because yeah, I haven't gone that far in terms of the raw diets.
Yeah, it's funny because we had him on our show before he passed away, and man, I tell you what, the stories that he would tell and the amount of people that have turned their life around with his diet. But then again, on the same token, like you said, it's almost like an elimination diet, because there's an aspect, like this critical mass point in time where you could do it long enough to avoid eating the foods that are making you sick, and maybe you don't even know what those foods are, but you're just eating like steak every day, whether it's raw or cooked. Or if you keep going, you're just going to develop a food allergy. So you have to figure out at some point like how long you can go so that you can eliminate all the bad stuff, but not go too long to where you're going to develop an allergy from a food because you're eating it every day for 10 or 20 years.
No, exactly. And even with regards to some of the new tests that are out there, like gut tests, where people are doing something like Viome, and they're being told you need to avoid eggs or coffee, and people are like, "What? I love that! I switched my diet up a year ago, and I feel amazing when I do it." It doesn't mean that you can't eat it forever or drink that forever. It just means that at your body's current state, somehow it's having an adverse effect, whether the bacteria in your gut are reacting negatively to it, or it's causing something else. So it's, to your point about cycling on and off, we it's always good to do that. I mean, whether someone says, I'm just going to abstain from any caffeine for a week, or I recently just did a 3-day water fast, just nice little reset, and I felt great afterwards. And then we can take it to like things like a fasting mimicking diet, which is more like a 5-day program where you're getting a very minimal amount of calories from mostly plant-based sources. So there's all the different ways to do it. And I mean, the one thing I like to stress with, we call things diet, and I view that, I really view it more as like a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm not trying to, like, for me, it's just about, I want to maintain, optimal health, and, and see what works for me. And I also don't hold to one set of beliefs. Like I think it's a Peter Thiel. He's like a venture capitalist and a technology entrepreneur. He had a quote that's it's strong beliefs loosely held. And I approach all this in the same way. Like, I've got my belief system at the moment about a lot of things, but I'm never gonna like tell someone you're wrong, or kind of poo-poo on it, because I'm willing, if they can make a valid argument, I'm willing to listen to anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll entertain it. And it's definitely helped me over the years, where I've had to rethink certain things that at one point, whether it's I just didn't have the information, or it just wasn't out there yet, and now we have more stuff to back it. Because we can sit there all day and just cite PubMed articles and say, this is good for you, and another one that says this is bad for you. We can always support our argument that way. But when I have conversations with people, I think what we have to realize, we're all individuals, and when we do the self-experimentation or go down our adventures in biohacking or wellness, your mileage may vary. That's what I tell everybody. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we can do the same experiment, like we can structure it exactly the same way. Our results will be different. It doesn't mean that it's wrong in either case. It just
Mm-hmm.
means, that that's how we each individually respond to it.
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about this a little bit with Amy Prohl, who's a PhD. If you haven't heard that interview, Bob, I think you would really, really like it. She's like a scientist through and through. And we talked about the microbiome. And it was interesting because it was like whenever anyone talks or, mentions the microbiome, I just kind of, in my head, I'm like, microbiome, it just kind of bores me because I've heard about it for so long. But she talked about like there's actually bacteria or viruses in your body that will actually overtake a bacteria in your body and then use that bacteria to turn off receptor cells on the cell membrane, or set themselves up in a biofilm and actually communicate electrically with other bacteria that are also in their own biofilms in different areas of the body. And she was talking about how like there's different microbiomes for your liver, different microbiome for your gut, different microbiome for every organ system, and the relationship between fungus and bacteria and mold and yeast and all these things in your body and how they interact with each other in this giant ecosphere. And it just was so fascinating, and it kind of makes me think about what you're saying in the sense that like two people can do the same studies, exactly the same experiment, but maybe the only thing difference is one person is a very negative person and the other person is a very happy person. So that skews the results, and that changes their microbiome of their whole body and, the test results,
Oh, absolutely. And the placebo effect can be very strong as well, in a positive way,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not going to, I think that's been proven. But yeah, I think, we can, microbiome is like, I think we're just scratching the surface still on all of that, like it's like every 6 months or so they uncover new things that we never knew about. So, I'm excited to see where that all goes. I think right now it's in kind of like data collection mode where they're able to sequence all this information, and then they just now have to sift through it and figure out what it all means. I think the knowledge we have in terms of like, okay, we know what kind of bacteria we are, but and what's a balanced microbiome look like. But to your point, where the understanding like how these systems communicate and operate as a almost like one giant organism in itself.
Yeah.
If you talk about something like a biofilm, it's pretty amazing.
Gosh, the human body is so complex. Just like that was probably one of the most unique shows that we've done with Amy Prohl. So, maybe I'll send you the link to that after the show. But so when it comes to getting studies and getting tests and getting these things, I know there's a lot of different websites, like you said, Viome or any lab test now. You can go and .com, you can go there. And, if someone's just starting out with this sort of trying to track their health, what areas should they start testing, and should they get their blood tested? I guess it depends, right? If you're a man or woman and different things, but where's a good resource for people to start with all this stuff, do you think?
Well, there's basic panels that you would call like on a male or female sort of metabolic panel. They cover a lot of the basics in terms of looking everything from red blood cells, white blood cells, to getting into some of the hormones, making sure that you don't have vitamin deficiencies. Like a lot of people are low in vitamin D, for example, just because we're all inside all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of start there. You'll often hear these blanket terms, especially now that we're moving. A lot of people will maybe have a more traditional Western doctor, then they may move to more of a functional or integrative practitioner, and they'll say like, okay, we're going to look at your thyroid, we're going to look at some of your thyroid hormones, and it'll be like, oh, you're hypothyroid, and so then I think like 9 out of 10 people will probably end up saying that they're hypothyroid, and so that kind of starts peeling back layers of the onion, and you start digging deeper and deeper. So like, I would say the basic panels, these are just the ones you can get. If you don't, if you want to work through your doctor, they're usually a packaged up panel that you can order, and they might order some custom markers within that. There's definitely these specialized tests that we could spend a whole nother hour talking about. But I think for someone just starting out, just getting some basic understanding of where they're at, and if even if you're going for your annual checkout, if you need to address something, you may have to go back a little more frequently. Maybe not do the full panel, but the couple of things that might look a little out of place,
Mm-hmm.
6 months after you make some changes. Like for me, I started off that way. I kind of did some basic panels, some metabolic testing. We were looking at my body's response to like a glucose challenge test. We uncovered some things. Then we did some little deeper hormonal tests because we were addressing things with the thyroid, but really that uncovered things with my gut. It turned out that about a decade prior, I had been bitten by a tick and had gotten some Lyme disease, but I caught it really, really early on. So I didn't ever develop the symptoms. I mean, I saw the little bullseye mark on my leg that the trademark kind of bite.
Oh, wow.
But they gave me a bunch of antibiotics. So we caught it early. So the fortunate news is like I didn't have any issues with my that you run into, with someone who's really developing bad Lyme symptoms. But you get other co-infections and things like that, and those stay in your system even if they're somewhat dormant. But they gave me antibiotics, which basically, it's like it kills. It doesn't care if it's a good stuff or bad stuff in your gut. It's just kind of killing everything. And I think that really kind of set me back a bit. And that's what caused some other autoimmune issues that were uncovered, let's say 10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent literally the first 5 years rebuilding my systems, because you have to first start by supporting other organs and systems there before you can start tackling other conditions. Like maybe you have things like H. pylori or candida and other things that can develop in a gut that's not that's not optimal. And so I think that's what people have to realize is it may have taken you decades to get to a certain state or condition you're in, and you can try to reverse it quickly, but it's not overnight. It's going to take time. You're going to have to put in some effort. And so you have to kind of just be patient and stay on course, because I think that's, at least I can speak from personal experience. I mean, it's taking, I'm still, 7-8 years into this, and I'm definitely in a much, much better place today. But if you're trying to be like, again, optimal, there's still more things that can be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mentioned before that we'll take some questions from the chat room and we'll kind of jump around a little bit. So here we've got a series of questions from Jordan here in the chat room, and she wants to know, she's curious, she's really a big fan of Dr. Robert Morse, who does a lot of work with herbs and fruits and things like that. And she wanted to know if you're familiar with the Dr. Morse protocol. So I asked her in the chat room, I said, can you elaborate a little bit? And she says here, fruits, berries, melons to maximize energy. Maximize energy equals healing, herbs to support weak systems and organs while detoxing. Cannot burn the body with too much energy versus water fasting. So she says here, we are much too toxic and there can be major issues with water fasting because of this. We have a species-specific diet, and so she says fructose doesn't take insulin to process, whereas glucose does, and diabetics need fruit. So there's a lot of people, kind of doing this kind of stuff now recently with the Dr. Morse protocol, and then there's the Dr. Ray Peat. We've, talked to people about that, his specific stuff. He does a lot of work with sugar, and we talked to Danny Roddy years ago, who does a lot of work with like this sort of whole demonization of sugar, and people doing the ketogenic diet and they're missing, aspects of sugar and how that affects the body and stuff like that. So I'm curious, are you familiar with all this? I'm sure you are. And what are your thoughts about it all?
Well, I'm familiar with the concepts of the fruits and the herbs. In terms of the specific protocols, not so much. I just know from personal experience, my response to simple carbs. So if I do a glucose test, I don't respond very well. I overshoot and tend to go I'll go up and then come back down and go hypoglycemic. So I know for me, I try to minimize or eliminate as much sugar as possible, but I'm not saying it's there's still some I get, and I'll get it naturally. Like I will get some from some, I'll eat certain berries and fruits, but I keep it in moderation. And I only eat ones that I know, for me at least, don't spike things up. Mm-hmm. I think we're all individualized. And to the point about fasting, I agree. Like if anyone has any other stressors on their body, things like intermittent fasting, it's going to be another stressor. So you may not want to do that every day until your body's in a good state. But in terms of, water fasts, I'm not doing that every day either. I'm doing like maybe once a quarter. I'll just do like a 3-day weekend and kind of do it. It's not my normal sort of, I'm just fasting again today. I experiment around with different things. I just know for me, it provides a nice reset. And I definitely agree. Like, talk to your doctor if you've got a certain condition. Mm-hmm. what works for me isn't necessarily ideal for everybody else.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying, water fasting destroys your thyroid and your adrenal glands and stuff like that. But then, it's all this stuff. I feel like for those of you that are sort of thinking like that, I'd highly recommend that Amy Prohl video that we just did like 2 or 3 days ago, because there's so much going on in the human body that we have literally no idea what's actually going on, and how do you explain if fasting is so bad? Why is it part of a lot of cancer clinics and they do so well on it? It wouldn't make any sense. It seems like from a historical perspective, right? We weren't eating every single day. And so it depends on the environment we're living in, the stressors we're exposed to. This world is completely different than the world of our Paleolithic ancestors, for example. And so the amount of stressors that we're exposed to is going to affect all these different things that we're doing. And you can't say that, sugar is bad, fasting is bad, ketosis is good, ketosis is bad. Like you're saying, Bob, it's like, it's individualized, right? Everyone has their own thing. And some people, one protocol might work for them for a while, but then maybe when they move into their 40s or 50s, it's a different protocol. Not saying that either one of them is bad, but just different, right?
Yeah, you have to decide what you're ultimately optimizing for. Someone, let's say, is really into performance. Well, if you're like an elite athlete, like a Tour de France cyclist, whatever, like that's terrible for your health. I mean, you might have a near term amazing, your performance is top notch, but then, from a longevity standpoint, it's not very beneficial. So you have to decide at some point whether, how do you want to turn those knobs? If you can say, I want to weigh longevity over, performance or just general wellness. And so I think when you're younger, in your 20s and teens and 20s, you might be more on the performance side. You're not really thinking about longevity. And then when you get to your 30s, you start going, oh, okay, I got to, rethink this a little bit. And so, but I still want to kick, kick butt. I still want to be able, I'm an athlete still, and I play sports and do and things like that. So I still want to be able to do it, but I'm not trying to train for the Olympics or anything. I just want to make sure I can still keep up with, people that are 15, 20 years younger than me.
Yeah.
From just playing, being like, playing, sports. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So on your website, what kinds of things are you going to be tracking? What kind of experiments are you doing now? Like, what's the future of what you're looking to do on your website and document?
So a lot of what I'm doing is, we talk about biohacking, so obviously the big focus on the body and wellness, but quantified self is really what this all kind of came out of, and that's really the data piece of it. A lot of people aren't necessarily driven by the numbers and the data. So a lot of what I try to do is I'll come across something that looks interesting or I might want to apply to myself and figure out a way to structure an experiment where I can maybe gather some data and some metrics around it. And I'm not always tracking a million things. I have some, baseline things that I'm tracking every day, sort of passively, whether it's, it's like my wearables and sleep and activity data. But like if I want to do like glucose tracking, I can prick my finger with a glucose, use a glucose meter to check it, or I can wear a continuous glucose monitor for, let's say, 2 weeks. Gives me a good insight about things, and I can, go back to it, let's say 6 months from now. So the things I'm, really into tracking now, I've kind of been on this little run lately on some performance metrics around using some things like exogenous ketones. And so these aren't about being being ketogenic or ketogenic diet. It's more like seeing the acute response from a performance standpoint, knowing that I can take something that maybe gives me a boost for a few hours, and then I might get the benefit from the training, but I'm not getting the benefit necessarily long term from it's not like saying I'm replacing eating a certain way. Mm-hmm. From the standpoint of diet and environment, those there's new sensors and technologies coming out around that I'm pretty excited about. And also there's a lot of companies out there now, they're touting this idea of we're going to quantify your biological age. Like and they do it all different ways. Some will say give us blood, some will say we'll take your blood pressure and your heart rate variability and those things. And so I'm working on an experiment where I'm going to stack a bunch of these different tests together and see how they all compare. It's like one will tell me I'm like 90 years old, and one will tell me I'm 20. We'll see what the range of values there. But there's some exciting tests coming out of that I'm actually excited about, where it's almost taking genetic testing to the next level, because it's actually doing epigenetic testing. It's actually looking at the effects of our environment and lifestyle. So whereas our genes don't change, like we can do a genetic test that might show us our risk factors or disposition for things, but it doesn't, that test can't tell us what's actually turned on or off. It's only a risk or a chance of something being there. Like they might say like, oh, you might think something tastes sour or bad or good. But when you get into epigenetic testing, it's showing the effects of, like, again, your environment and lifestyle, which you can retest as often as you want. And once these tests come down in price, I think that's going to be a really key marker that we can use, because it's just a saliva test, and that'll kind of guide us in terms of our choices that we're making having a positive or negative effect in terms of our perceived biological age, and not just like an overall number, but specific organs and systems. So you might be like, well, your brain is like a 20-year-old, but your liver is like like a 90-year-old, and so that's where that's the kind of stuff that when it's going more into this sort of this, it's mirroring or it's layering over with what's been going on in longevity circles for a while now, and so some of these things are coming out of the lab and into products and solutions. So I'm personally excited about that.
Yeah, no, this is really cool. I'm checking out your Viome microbiome metabolic health article here. I'm showing it on the YouTube video if you guys are listening on the podcast. And he's got some cool graphs and some cool results here. And it looks like here it says, you say, in my case, they identified that I metabolize carbohydrates very quickly, so suggest I respond best to a diet that stabilizes blood sugar, includes foods higher in healthy fats, includes lots of good quality proteins and fibrous vegetables. They also suggest I may be more sensitive to the effects of caffeine, which is interesting because my genetic data actually indicates that I'm a fast metabolizer of caffeine. So there's so many different aspects to all this stuff, right? I mean, it's like one test says one thing, another test says something else.
Exactly. So that's very counterintuitive, right? So it might say like, I know I can drink coffee at midnight and go to bed 5 minutes later. I metabolize it very quickly. It doesn't bother me. But I think what they might be saying is I might be able to metabolize it quickly, but it maybe irritates something. There could be bacteria in my gut or something where perhaps if you don't do it in moderation, it can have some detrimental effects to your gut health.
Yeah. And just like you said, a lot of times people are looking for, oh, what is my metabolic age? But then, like you said, and what, Amy said on our show is like there's different microbiomes for different organs. And the same way that you're looking for a metabolic age, there could be a metabolic age, like you said, for your liver, for your heart, for your gut. So just because, you could be metabolically 20 years old everywhere, but have the heart of a 95-year-old. And so that's not good, So you want to make sure that you're like really diving and getting deep into the specifics of all this stuff, because there's organs and systems that aren't affected that maybe aren't showing on these tests. Like you just said, if you're able to metabolize coffee and go to bed right after, my brother's the same way. He can drink a cup of coffee or two and go right to bed. I can't do that, but it's just crazy.
Yeah, again, it's we're all individuals, and and that the genetic testing might say like you're very likely to be a fast metabolizer of caffeine. That's a case where I can easily prove it. I can just drink coffee and go, yeah, I must be, because it doesn't keep me up. Mm-hmm. But there could be other things where they're doing like risk factors for type 2 diabetes, where I actually had an elevated risk factor, saying genetically, the average person probably has about a 26% risk factor of developing type 2. And I think my number that was something where around like 36 or something, 37. So it's about 11 points higher than the average person. Now, does that mean I'm going to develop it? No, but that kind of started me on my journey doing a lot of glucose experiments and understanding the behavior of things on my glucose, not just after a meal, but long term. I know what happens when I travel, or different stressors, or what happens when I exercise. Because I don't think that something like type 2 diabetes, it shouldn't just sneak up on someone. Like you can proactively just be monitoring what's going on in your body rather than expensively years and decades in advance. So I'm personally making an effort to keep my numbers in a certain range that organizations like the Life Extension Foundation will say, that those are considered to be optimal ranges. And to be honest, like it's a struggle for me to get into optimal zone. I'm pretty good, but like I'm not like all the way down there. It's definitely something that I'm just still trying to strive for.
Yeah, no, this is cool. I'm on your resources page too, and it looks like you have a lot of cool stuff that you're recommending for people.
Yeah. There's a lot of different categories. The post, like when I write up stuff on my site, there's always a resources section at the end of each post that will talk about all the things I mentioned. Or if you want to go read the studies, I always try to cite every. So because again, I'm not all I'm doing is distilling information I'm collecting from elsewhere for people. I'm not necessarily, I'm not the scientist or the doctor. I'm saying, look, this is my research has provided me with this information. I'm sharing it with you, you know, and again, I'm sharing you my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it inspires someone to kind of go and try to do the same experiment.
Mm-hmm. Hey, what are your thoughts while I have you here on 23andMe? I watched an interesting article, or I watched an interesting video on YouTube, and it was talking about all the sort of creepy aspects of 23andMe and what they do with your data and all that stuff. Do you think anything like that is true? You know, what they're doing with your data and why they want your DNA? Do you think there's anything fishy about that, or no?
Well, that brings up this whole issue of privacy and data, which is a very valid and important one, especially when, I don't use a tool or device often. If like I can't get my data out of it. So if I have a wearable and they say, well, you can get your, top level stats, but you can't get the raw data. Then I'm like, well, it's a deal breaker for me. So with 23andMe, basically what happened was it was a service that's been around for a number of years. Um, they, they decided they were going to partner up with a large pharma company, but provide data to them anonymously that they could use for some studies. So effectively, they were saying we have we have millions of users that have submitted us their data. We have this genetic data. We're not gonna. It's all been anonymized, but we're able to share it with them. But they never gave people the chance to opt. That was never like something I could opt into. So all of a sudden, this information is getting there now. Regardless, it's not your full genome. It's just they're looking at certain what's called SNPs. That's how these tests work. The next generation of DNA tests will be full genome sequencing, which is at about $1,000 right now. So in another year, that'll probably get more affordable to where many consumers will basically want to do it because it's a one-time sort of thing. But I would be very, very wary of any service that anything that's going to collect any sort of data like that on you. You should understand what the privacy practices are there, what the feasibility. Sometimes there's companies out there that go under, and they have like a fire sale. They sell it, and their technology isn't what's worth any money. They're just selling the data to a third party, and that might be in their terms and conditions that you don't even realize. So
Mm-hmm.
I would, so like I just submitted. I'm doing a full genome sequencer at the moment with a new company that came out of Cambridge University. That they're very clear about that they will never share or sell the data. You have access to all of it. They'll destroy it at any time you ask them to. Not just the data, but the samples. So
Oh.
so that's pretty. I like to see that companies are going in that direction.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Okay. Yeah. So it looks like on your page you have a lot of really cool resources that people and these are all places you've tried or used and recommend to people. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of the resources section is really just a culmination of all the content. It's in all the posts I've done and the experiments I've done. I kind of just said, let me just distill them into one location. So in some cases, there might be two or three alternates for something. Like if somebody's looking to do glucose testing, there's a few different meters there, and I'll say, well, this is the one this is my go-to one, but there's another one. It's okay,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to try it. So yeah, so like a lot of these are, I definitely I've used vet, everything. There's a lot of products that I simply just won't put up there because I've used them or I just don't, I didn't have a positive experience. So I'm not going to, you know, I'd rather just not talk about something than be like,
Yeah.
I can't be like recommending something and be like, well, I didn't really like it. I try to keep things positive. I'd rather just be like, let's focus on the things that I feel are good that are out
Yeah.
there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool stuff, Bob. Well, thanks for being on, man. I appreciate it. And this is really cool. So where can people go? Is it just quantifiedbob.com? Is that the best place to follow you?
So yeah, so the blog and the longer sort of write-ups are at quantifiedbob.com. Kind of the more fun day-to-day stuff that you want to see what I'm working on. If you go like on Instagram, quantified Bob on Instagram, I'm often just sharing kind of day-to-day. Maybe I'm trying out some new tech or kind of designing an experiment idea. It's just a little more like off the cuff. Whereas the blog is definitely more like those posts. A lot of effort goes into each one of them, so it's less frequent, but they go pretty deep. So and Twitter, I would say, is also quantified Bob. Facebook, Quantified Bob. So basically anywhere, any of those platforms, just search for Quantified Bob, and I will come up there.
Yeah, no, I got your I got your Instagram up here, and it looks like you're using that Live O2 oxygen training session. How was that?
So that's actually my system. I this was in my home for about a year.
Uh huh.
I now have a lot of my I took a bunch of my biohacking equipment into a new space in New York City called Hacked, that you can probably see in that other picture there.
All right.
I moved my stuff into that space. So now other people can access it. So if anyone's in New York City and wants to come to like the coolest biohacking facility in New York City, check it out.
That's awesome. So
And
where is this located? It's called Hacked Fitness. Is that what it is?
Yeah, Hacked Fitness, HACKD Fitness. It's basically in the heart of Manhattan, New York City, convenient to all transportation, et cetera. There's everything from, it's all data-driven training, recovery, efficient exercise,
Wow.
and some people just want to come in and try a few cool things. Other people want to really integrate this into a more of a goal-oriented program. And yeah, and so it's fun because like I'm a data guy, and being able to go and measure my progress on something like the ARX machine, and then do things with other types of training that I know I can just do something in 15 minutes and be like just completely just exhausted and get the benefit of an hour workout is pretty cool.
That's so cool. And did you say it's your facility there? Is that what it is?
So no, so I had a setup called Optimal OPTML, and
Okay.
when hack, so I'm basically involved with it, but my Optimal is my piece of it that's in there. So the space is
Oh,
called Hacked Fitness, and I'm in there with Optimal. Yeah.
oh,
So it's
I
just
see.
easier to send people to. It's easier to send people to Hacked Fitness because it's like everything's in one place, and you can see, and they have a lot of other cool stuff as well.
Oh,
So
wow,
yeah,
that's cool, man. So this is in New York City.
it is. Yeah, it just opened about a month ago.
That is so cool. I'm looking at your compression sock or compression equipment here for your whole leg, which is I've seen those things before. Do they work pretty well?
Oh, they're awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like they're. I mean, if you do any kind of like lower body training and you throw those things on for 25 minutes or so, I mean, it feels amazing. Yeah,
Wow. Wow, that's really
but
cool.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's for me. It's like I feel recovery, is is just as important as training, and so I was one of those same people that like 10 years ago, you thought if you didn't go to the gym 6 days a week, 2 hours a day or whatever, you weren't doing enough, you're putting enough effort, and you realize you're
Right.
overtraining and you're not giving your body time to recover.
Hmm.
So now we're just getting a lot more wise with regards to like how to train, when to train, and when to recover.
Yeah, I just listened to a podcast yesterday while I was training, oddly enough, or was 2 days ago, with Tim Ferriss and LeBron James. And they talked to LeBron James's trainer. And part of it was talking about his recovery and how he uses cold thermogenesis and light therapy and all this kind of crazy stuff that you're probably doing and I do some of. But, it's so interesting. And there's a reason why basketball players and even football players and lots of high level athletes are now playing for way longer. Back when Jerry West was playing basketball, like he played a long time and he played for 12 years. Kobe Bryant just retired playing 20 years, and LeBron James wants to play for 20 years. I mean, there's a reason why these things work, right?
Yeah, but also we have the ability now, like when you think of like a sport, a team, like okay, let's say you're the Lakers and you're LeBron and company at they're gonna have a practice. It used to be like, okay, let's run practice. We're all gonna do the same practice today. But now what
Mm-hmm.
they can do is they're wearing these wearables now where each person has their individual physiological state assessed by the training staff each day. So it'd be like, oh, we just traveled, cross country. Okay, LeBron, you need to rest today. Take it easy. These three guys can go really hard today. You can kind of, this other person can go kind of in the middle. And so now you're personalized the training per person as well each day. It's not like we're all going to run the same sprints and do the same workout.
Uh-huh.
And I think that is, and the concepts that you're starting to see, and this actually with LeBron, it was in, I think when he was still in Cleveland, like
Uh-huh.
there was a couple times where he took the day off. And everyone's like, "What are why is he not playing? He's not hurt." And it's like, no, he's recovered. If he rests now, he won't get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have him take one day off than lose a month getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So, so the mentality of like, yeah, it's okay to say like, I need a day off, I need to recover. and it's making its way into professional sports.
Yeah, and I think that philosophy, that general idea that we're all different and unique, is sort of spreading also to other areas of life too. Like, the coach Phil Jackson, when he was coaching Michael Jordan in Chicago, he would allow Dennis Rodman to show up for 30 minutes before the game, whereas everybody else had to show up on time. And he allowed Dennis Rodman to leave and not have to talk to the media, because each person has their own specific set of what makes someone tick and what makes someone not tick. And applying the same rules to everyone is just going to be detrimental. And I think the same, you can go through our schooling and education system and our dietary platitudes that we say that everyone should be off carbs or on carbs, or everyone should learn in school the same way, or the same type of information. I think that this idea of individual sort of assessments of every area of our life is becoming more and more popular, I think.
Yeah, well, we have the ability now, to measure that and track it. So, it was something that we, even 5 years ago, was not that easy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and hopefully it's making its way, not just from the standpoint of professional athletes and, those elite sort of, performers, but work its way down to school children, and I think we'll get there. It's definitely working its way down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Hey, Bob, do you do any podcasting, or do you have a YouTube channel? Do you have any audio videos out there?
If you go on my site, I don't do direct podcasting. I feel like I'm much better for people to come on to shows like yours and kind of talk, because it's otherwise I would just run out of things to say. But in terms of videos, yeah, I speak at a lot of events and conferences, things like that. If you go on my site, there's a section, I think, with media, and you'll see some links there. Also, if you go on YouTube and just do Quantified Bob, I think there might be a playlist with some of the presentations and talks I've given.
Oh, okay.
So I see you're scrolling past. There was a talk at an event called Superhuman Summit. That's more like a TED style talk. So that was about a year ago in Vancouver.
Okay.
That's more like a well professionally shot sort of, TED style talk versus I've given talks at biohacking conferences, these quantified self events where it's a little more casual.
Uh-huh.
And then, we mentioned, there's been some TV programs and documentaries and things like that as well. So yeah, it's, so I kind of get around to a lot of other areas, but my goal is really to just kind of share the information I collect and hopefully inspire other people to, go on their journey for self-understanding and optimization.
Yeah, man, that's so cool. Well, Bob, thanks, man, for being on. I really appreciate your time today and just sharing your story with us and your website and all the different things you're tracking. If you are doing any other new experiments or make some crazy discoveries, let us know.
Will do. Thanks again.
All right, thanks a lot, Bob. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, there you go. Bob Troia, episode 637. I hope you guys enjoyed that show. I got something really, really interesting to share with you here really quickly about our water system. This is crazy. So before the show, I was doing some research into the water where we live, which is in San Juan Capistrano, Southern California. So I'm going to share with you the results of this. This is creepy, and this is something that you could do. You can plug in your zip code and find out the water and what the state of the water is in your particular area. So I'll share that in just a second. I'm curious about your thoughts on Bob Troia and his website, quantifiedbob.com. But I wanted to tell you, speaking of sort of biohacking and sort of manipulating your environment, this relaxed far infrared sauna is something that we are just massive, massive fans of. I use this thing every day. What's great about it is that you start sweating immediately. And during the winter months, this thing just feels so good. Oh my gosh, you go in there, it heats up right away, so there's no preheating to it. And you can go in there and use far infrared light in order to be able to detoxify your body of chemicals, of poisons, of toxins that are storing themselves in your fat cells. And I just love this thing. I use it every day. You can see a picture of Kate using it here. I turn our little monitor around and I watch Netflix videos. From an Ayurvedic perspective, it's always best to not heat your head up. That's why I don't like going into the big ones where you're inside. And plus, it's really boring too, because when I'm sitting in a sauna, I just want the time to be over, even though I love the sweating. But if I can learn something and listen to a podcast or watch a Netflix video or do some research and watch a documentary or something, I could do that. Just sit there in this awesome chair. There's silver lining on the inside, so it reflects all of the far infrared light that you can't see. It's not visible to the human eye, but it reflects it. That's why it gets hot so fast. And I just love this thing. I've been using it every day for about 7 years now. And it's by far our most incredible health tool that we have. And so there's a lot of different protocols you can do with sauna therapy too, like putting castor oil over your liver. You can put some of that on. You can take niacin. You can do a niacin flush. Some people take lipospheric glutathione. You can get that from Live On Labs and take that about 30 minutes before you go in, along with a lipospheric vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams. And then the sweat that comes off of you is just disgusting. So this stuff is really working with your body. So I highly recommend this Relax Far Infrared Sauna. Like I said, I've been using it, and it's our best-selling item that we sell. It's just an amazing piece of equipment. So if you guys are interested in it, let me know, or you can go on to extremehealthradio.com/637. And then the other thing that I like to do too, sometimes I'll do this before I get in the sauna, is to jump up and down on a Bellicon rebounder, and I'll listen to a podcast, or like right now it's really windy and rainy here, so I wouldn't go outside right now with the Bellicon, but I'll do it indoors. But typically I take it outside and I do it under full spectrum sun, getting all those 1,500 different wavelengths and different 10 to the 46 frequencies of biophotons coming from the sun, along with the Schumann resonance and the electromagnetic field of the earth and being grounded to the earth. So I'll do all these things while listening to something fun and learning, and I'll jump for about 30 minutes a day. It's something I've been doing for at least 6 years now, or more than that, because I started rebounding when I tore my ACL doing jiu-jitsu, and I did that from 2005 to 8. So I think it was about 2007 is when I started rebounding, which would be 12 years. And so it's incredibly beneficial way to detox the body, to detoxify your lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system is a series of one-way valves, and that's one of the places, along with your fat cells, where you store toxins. That's why the doctors will always check for swollen lymph nodes when you go to the doctor. You can see how I use it here. I'll bring it up if you guys are watching on the live show, you can see me jumping up, and that's what I do. I jump up and down every day. You can see my right foot. I'm grounded to the earth. It's grounding outside is incredible. And this is a little Cocoa Puff. But yeah, so after my workouts, I'll jump up and down on this thing, get all of that lymph system just flushed. The gravity, the G-force on every cell of my body just flush all of that out, and then I'll go jump in the sauna right afterwards. And man, it feels unbelievable. This Bellicon too is great for your circulation. It's great for moving your lymph system, cleansing and detoxifying the body. Plus, it's just a great excuse to get outside if you have the ability to get outside. I'm a huge fan. The Bellicon, I don't think anyone makes a better rebounder than the Bellicon. I'm telling you guys, this one is just the best. There's no other rebounder, in my opinion. We've had ours for, like I said, 7 years. When I first started, I started out with those cheapy ones from Walmart. And dude, not a big fan of those things because they broke. I went through like 4 of them, paid like $50 for them. I could have just bought a Bellicon, but unfortunately I went through 3 or 4 of those, and finally I had to stop because my knee was giving me so many problems, and that's why I got the Bellicon. And this thing, it feels like you're jumping on air. It's just incredible. It just feels so soft. And it just feels so good after a workout too. You can probably see me jumping on the video there, and it's quiet, it's silent, so you can go outside, you can do it inside with the babies are sleeping, you don't have to worry about noise. It's just really, really an awesome piece of equipment. So those are some things to bring into your home to help biohack your environment, and big fan of those tools. We use them every day, and I wouldn't tell you guys about them or have them in our store if we didn't use them and absolutely love them. But here's something that I found from the Environmental Working Group for the city of San Juan Capistrano. You can go on to ewg.org, biohacking.org. And let me bring this up and you guys can take a look at it. I was just finding this today or yesterday. This is the city of San Juan Capistrano where we live. It says here, this is just absolutely crazy. So there are 10 contaminants detected above healthy guidelines and 11 other detected contaminants. It says here, includes chemicals detected in 2015 for which annually utility averages exceeded the EWG selected health guideline establishment. So it goes on, and then it says what they are. Bromodichloroethamine, which is related to cancer. This is in our water. One of the total triolethamines is formed when chlorine or other disinfectants are used to treat drinking water. So the byproducts increase the risk of cancer and may cause problems during pregnancy. So that's just one. Bromoform, and that's related to cancer too. The byproducts increase the risk of cancer and may cause problems during pregnancy. So you can see how our levels compare. 1.77 parts per billion. That's the national, and ours was 3.13 parts per billion of this bromoform. Chromium, which is a hexavalent, is related to cancer. So it's just like, man, look at this. This is crazy. Radiological contaminants. I can't even say half of these words. Perfluorinated chemicals harmful to the immune system and changes in mammary gland development. PFOAs. This is just absolutely crazy. This chemical or group of synthetic compounds used in hundreds of products from nonstick pans to stain repellent clothing, wire coatings, and firefighting foam. These chemicals have been linked to endocrine disruption, accelerated puberty, liver and immune system damage, thyroid changes, and cancer risk. So this is like in our water. Radiological contaminants, uranium. Radiological contaminants, drinking water contaminated with radioactive substances increases the risk of cancer and may harm fetal development. This is just so crazy, right? And then 11 detected contaminants, chlorate, chromium. Look at this, fluoride, molybdenum, nitrate, strontium, vanadium. My God, this is just crazy, right? So I found that in our water. So I also found around 24,000 different chemicals in the water that you're drinking. And so you can go to ewg.org. And I think right now, let's go to their homepage. And I think what you do is you go to ewg.org, at least as it is right now. You close out this little window here, and then go to consumer guides on their homepage. And then I went to water. And then I went to, after that, EWG's National Tap Water Database. So then you can enter your zip code and you can just put in whatever your zip code is. And it says here, since 2010, water utilities testing found pollutants in America's tap water, according to EWG Drinking Water's quality analysis of 30 million state water records. Crazy, right? So the issue with water is that what a lot of people don't know is that they're mostly concerned with the water that they're drinking. But when you are bathing in or showering in water, you're actually bringing more water into your body than you would if you're drinking it, because your skin is your largest organ of your entire body, and water, those molecules, especially if you're in like a steam room or something like that, are going into the very small pores of your skin, and this is causing all of these issues that I just mentioned. So if you guys want a little resource, there you go, ewg.org, and you can check out the area on your website. And I'm curious what you guys are talking about. Let's see, Elizabeth here, Dr. Morse. You guys are big Dr. Morse fans, and I think I mentioned that he's going to be on our show here pretty soon. Beck says, did you ever listen to Deborah Tavares on 5G smart meters? Rebecca is a part of our Extreme Health Academy too, mind control, etc. If so, what is your thoughts on what she says? She says she's on a hit list. I'm going to look her up. No, Beck, I didn't. Deborah Tavares, did you send me her information before? I'll look her up. I've never heard of her. Weather warfare in plain sight. Oh gosh. Stopthecrime.net. Oh, I wonder if we should have her on. That would be kind of cool. Thanks, Beck, for the lead on that. Gidri says, "Hi, Justin. I'm really interested in your relaxed far infrared sauna and tried to email you, but didn't get your response yet." Huh? Did you write recently? I hope you ship it to the UK. Oh, and I love my rebounder too. I got a different one. Nice. Yeah, we ship to all over the world. I think the only two countries that we don't ship to are Singapore, or Thailand, I should say. I think maybe just Singapore in Thailand, and Germany. But everywhere else we ship. So can you send me another email? I would greatly appreciate it, Jidri. That would be awesome if you could. I don't know. We get so many emails a day, and I apologize for not getting back to you on that. But yeah, it's such a great machine, that relaxed far infrared sauna. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you haven't joined up on our... Actually, you know what I'll do? The best thing to do for you guys would be I'm going to put our newsletter here, because that's the best way to stay up to date with all of our shows. Healthradio.com/subscribe. And we email Monday and Thursday mornings. So that way you'll get an up-to-date access to what's going on in our show, like the last 5 shows that we've done. That's in every email that we send. And then the upcoming shows, we're working on getting that into the emails as well, so that you'll always be able to see what's coming up. So if you want to join one of the live shows and ask a question, you can do that. And then we feature any live events that are going on. Like a lot of times there's summits and these health events going on, like the Truth About Cancer, things like that. That I tell you about. And then if there's any discounts or any sales going on of the products that we promote, I put those in the email as well. So there's a lot of really cool stuff happening. So if you sign up to our newsletter, I highly recommend doing that. That way you can keep up to date with all of the stuff we have going on. And also, just to let you know too, the recent show that we did, let me bring that up. If you're signed up to us on iTunes, which if you could do that, that would be great. If you haven't subscribed to us on iTunes or Stitcher yet, make sure to do that, because you're going to be getting now a podcast a day. We have over 600 shows, and there's a lot of shows that go unwatched or unlistened to. And so right now, I just re-released the show that we did with Dr. Thomas Levy about vitamin C and cancer. So if you're subscribed to our podcast on iTunes, make sure to check out the shows. We'll be doing them just about every day. So there'll be a new show for you there, and you can check it out. We recently released an older episode with Rick Simpson, all about hemp and cannabis oil. And if you guys have ever watched the documentary Run from the Cure, man, talk about a powerful, powerful documentary. Like, the stories in there of what this plant is doing for people's extra cells in their body is just... unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And the ability for human beings to have access to cannabis oil is going to be what I think turns our culture around, because this is a powerful plant. This plant changes how we live on the earth. And there's very vested interests that don't want you to get access to this plant. And so we talk about that. Rick Simpson that guy's a fireball, man. He is passionate about his work. So that was episode 424, and that was just released. So yeah, we're releasing these new shows all the time. Like a lot of you guys were asking us to have Joe Dispenza on the show, and he was on episode 341. So sign up to our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, and that way you'll get access to all of these older shows, sort of rerun shows. And then you'll also be getting the 3 shows that we do per week. So it's a great way to stay up to date with everything we have going on, that in the newsletter. So I just wanted to encourage you guys to check that out. And also the show that we did with Doug Kaufman about fungus and cancer, that's on iTunes as well. So make sure to check those out. Yeah, I hope you guys are doing really great. Hopefully you have a great weekend. You're enjoying your Friday. It's about 12:30 here where I am. I haven't eaten yet, so I'm going to go home and eat and break my fast. And let me just see if you guys are talking about anything in the fun in the chat room. Yeah, so yeah, check out our shows on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. And I hope you guys enjoyed this one with Bob Troia, quantifiedbob.com. Love you guys so much, and it's really an honor to be doing what we're doing and helping you guys in any way we possibly can. So really appreciate your work, and and I'm sorry, you guys just being here and just, watching us while you're at home or at work or anywhere else like that. So I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll catch you on Monday. There's a couple shows going on Monday next week. It's going to be a great week. So make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube right now, there's a little bell button somewhere where you can get notifications when we go live. And I think that's about it. Thank you so much for subscribing, supporting our work, going to our store. Lots of great products in our store. And thank you guys for your continued support. And make sure to go check out the Extreme Health Academy. If you want a free 14-day trial to the Academy, there's a link in the description of this YouTube video down below. And if you're listening on a podcast, you can go to extremehealthradio.com/637, and there's a coupon code to get a free 14-day trial to the Extreme Health Academy. So make sure to check that out. All right, guys, love you very, very much. You are amazing. You are awesome. Thanks for being here, and I will catch you guys next on Monday at 10:45 with another show. And make sure to follow us on Instagram as well. That way you get updates on all of our shows that we do too. All right, love you guys, and have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse